Okay, we should be going live any second. And are we live? Let's see. Da-da-da-da-dum. Mm, um, okay, live on Facebook. Okay. I don't see that we're live. Perhaps we're live and we don't even know that we're live. Hold on a second.
Oh, it says mine says preparing live stream.
Yes, and mine too. Setting up your meeting, done.
Great.
Okay, I don't see that we're live yet. We might be live, so we're not going to use
If
any
we are high,
any expletives. Is that how you pronounce expletives?
no expletive.
Okay. So
I
I
know
hope we're
that
not.
from the Nixon era. I learned that word when
Mhm.
the Nixon Watergate tapes were finally published and it said expletive deleted all the time.
I left North America as a youngster, so my pronunciation is not that good.
Yeah, so
Um,
you missed Nixon. That's good.
I think we're on Facebook.
Yay!
I left before Nixon, and I'm Canadian, so you know. No, I didn't leave before Nixon. I left after Nixon. And you know what? I'm sure that we're on the air. So hello, everybody. Hello to Elizabeth
Hi!
Law.
Yay!
Welcome back. Welcome back to our wonderful New Books Network interview. Usually I interview people once, sometimes twice, almost never thrice. And Elizabeth, this is your fourth time.
You can't get
And
me. I'm the
and,
bad
and,
penny. Keeps turning up.
and it's not going to be the last. How do you account for that?
I'm really good at flapping my jaw.
No, I think that you are an incredible interviewee. And you certainly know how to answer my questions. And we're back today with a new subject. So, Elizabeth Law, wonderful editor from Viking and Holiday House and so many other places, who was in charge of the backlist of my favorite author, Ludwig Bemelmans and
Oh,
Madeline, and so many accolades. And now connected still to Holiday House, but quite a free lady to edit and just a word or two on your editing business.
well, it's true. I work at Holiday House as editor at large, which means I'm continuing to work with some of the authors that I worked with there and acquire the occasional new picture book. But I'm no longer a full-time employee there. And I still have this robust freelance editing business, which you can check out my website. It's Elizabeth Law. So I'm sorry, I'm confusing things. The website is elaw, which is my nickname, elawreads.com.
Your nickname is Elaw?
My nickname is Elaw. Some of my old friends call me that. That's
Well,
why my website is Elaw Reads.
I'm old and I'm your friend.
Okay, you can call me Elaw if you want, but
Okay,
it's easier to find me googling Elizabeth Law, I think. So, yeah.
for sure. And before I forget, do you want to introduce me or should I? I'll introduce me. I'm Mel Rosenberg, and I am the host of the Children's Literature Channel of the New Books Network, which is why we are here. And Elizabeth, just to refresh ourselves, in our first interview, I'm going to put all the links underneath because they're all special. First interview, we talked about you, your childhood, your life, our arrested growth, me at age 5 and you at age 12, your family, your father who taught business and taught you business and your love for children's books, and then library, and then you discovered you could get a job in the publishing industry, and this has become your heaven on earth
My
for
vocation,
yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. And but together with that, and maybe the later stage, you developed a love for theater. And we're going to talk today about children's books, picture books in particular, and theater, similarities and differences, and what we can learn from them. So how about starting out by telling us again briefly how you developed a love for theater? I mean, a real love.
Well, you're right. It's different than children's books because obviously I was exposed to books from before I can remember. And speaking of Bemelmans, my mother kept a baby book for me. If you guys know what those are, where you write down your baby's first and stuff. And she listed all the gifts I got. And there is a copy of Madeline in there among my baby gifts. And years later, I did go on to work with the Bemelmans' widow and his daughter and grandson.
And I'll just remind ourselves that as young children, our daddies used to read to us incessantly, and we developed a love for children's books.
I think that's still going on. But anyway, right. I loved children's books, so I can't say when that started because it was like breathing in and out.
But your love for the theater.
Right. Well, I was exposed to various children's shows. I remember being taken to see HMS Pinafore and some other things, but then
you mentioned that in our first interview, Gilbert and Sullivan.
Well, that was kind of a fluke. My mother and there was a subscription to something, and we went. I like Gilbert and Sullivan, but I can't say that was, except being brought one time, I can't say that was anything.
To make the punishment fit the crime, the punishment fit the crime.
My family, they're not even musical people. My sister and I have often discussed that one of us might be adopted because we're so different. She doesn't like musicals. She doesn't like to sing, so, but I had, a lot of people who love the theater have a story about they were taken with their Aunt Bessie and they saw something. And of all things, what happened to me was we had a good family friend who was at Tufts, which is, a university that was near my house. And she was an undergraduate and they were doing a production of The Musical Company. And she was the costume designer and she was in the show. So we went. And I was 11 or 12 years old. And it wasn't my friend Martha's role. It was this woman who I realize now was an undergraduate in college, but seemed like a grown-up woman to me, singing the show-stopping number from that, The Ladies Who Lunch, which for the people who don't know it, it's a number, I guess about a jaded and wealthy New York, many times married woman who's very burned out with her life. And in the production I saw, she was standing on the edge of the stage with a cocktail in her hand, singing "I'll Drink to That." And she was wearing very contemporary clothing because my friend was an excellent costume designer. And it was, my mother had a very sardonic wit and was very cosmopolitan. And my parents were, wasps. They drank a lot, just like the people in the show. And I watched that number and I thought, it's my mother on stage. And I remember the visceral feeling going through my body because I didn't know that theater could be about real people here and now. I had been taken to sort of these fun little historic things that sometimes I just didn't know it could be about real life. And that was so exciting to me. And that was the moment the bug hit. And I became a Sondheim fanatic long before it was trendy. Now he's so popular that straight men are mansplaining about it. But, I was a groupie years ago.
And also, I just want to mention that but the Jews say you're a shtetl girl because you also have roots in farmland and places with no electricity.
Fiddler, I can't believe I didn't mention Fiddler because really there were two.
No, you did. You did mention Fiddler and
other.
What's that? This is my next question. So
okay,
don't get spooky on me here.
Okay.
What did you want to say about Fiddler? You're probably answering the question that I'm about to ask you.
Well, it was the other. I guess there were really two moments because I was taken to see Fiddler on the Roof when it was in its original run. And I was in a very, in fact, we saw it in London because my father was giving a talk in London. So we were in London and I was dragged to see this musical and we were late and I was cranky and they were singing about tradition at the beginning of the show. And at the end, that had to leave their traditions behind, like everything had been broken. Plus, there was a girl in it because, he has 5 daughters and one of those daughters. So there was sort of somebody I could relate to, but I really got it. And the show was so great. It was so great. So I've always thought those two things were the two things that really got me excited. And again, I love my family and they've been very supportive, but it was none of them were like theater nuts. It was definitely my own crazy path that I followed.
So, Fiddler on the Roof takes place in the shtetl, little,
right.
In the Jewish Pale settlement in Europe. tiny village. And when you talked about this in your first interview, you just mentioned Fiddler on the Roof. And I said, okay, well, this is interesting. I know that you like a lot of Jewish authors and in musicals, but Fiddler on the Roof is a little bit of a it bothers me, not bothers me in a good way, that it remains one of the most popular musicals in the history of musicals, and yet it's a very Jewish musical.
I think it's one of my favorite musicals, and I saw it just recently with Danny Burstein at Lincoln Center. But I think it's so universal. The family and the children growing up and challenging their parents. And when she sings "Far from the Home I Love" in the second act, I mean, that's not a Jewish song. That's a song about leaving home.
Yeah,
You can see
I,
I'm choking up now.
I'm going to start crying now.
Yeah.
We're
Oh,
gonna
that
we're,
song, it gets me every time. And I hope people get a chance to see sometime this Yiddish Fiddler on the Roof. Obviously, I don't speak Yidler, but they had titles, super titles, so you could read the words. And watching the song Sabbath Prayer sung in Yiddish was transporting. So but in English, it's just as. And what about Sunrise Sunset? I mean, who doesn't weep watching their children grow up? Yeah.
no, but Far from the Home I Love, that's the
Uh, it's a song I forget that everybody doesn't know theater as well as I do. It's a daughter who is telling her father that she's getting married and leaving. And
yeah.
and she doesn't even know that her parents are about to move to America at the end of the show. Yeah, so
She's
she may
married.
never see them again.
She's marrying a Bolshevik and going to Siberia.
Yeah, yeah. She's not
which
going to
is
spend that
which
together.
is really oy vey for Tevye.
Yeah.
So
But
let's
Tevye loves his
now.
family.
Well, you've given me goosebumps, Elizabeth. And when next time we meet in New York, we're going to sing together.
Okay.
We'll stand there in the middle of Bryant Park and we'll sing Sunrise Sunset together.
Oh God. Okay. Well, I'll bring the Kleenex. Yeah.
Okay, it'll have to be at sunrise or sunset
Okay.
or both.
I used to sing in a little singing group when I was in seventh grade, and we had tambourines that we would shake along to it, and everything would hit along with such a great song.
Let's now get down to brass tacks.
Okay, let's talk.
Okay, how is a picture book like theater? And why should authors take this into consideration?
I think that authors who are writing picture books would learn a lot. The thing is, as you know, once you start writing, you start noticing the craft and other things. I'm sure that happened to you, Mel. And when I watch I just saw something on stage where I could see how well they were handling the pacing. And picture books and theater pacing is so critical. I think in a movie, you can get up and get some popcorn if you're bored or go to the bathroom or something. But in the theater, they really have to know what they're doing and change the scene the second it's time to move on. And picture books are exactly like that, right? It's all about the page turn. It's all about the story, keeping the kid involved. That's one thing.
Yeah, okay, well, let's not hold on. Let's talk about the dissimilarity.
Okay.
And that is that, okay, I grant you that. It's all about pace and page turns, but you have 12 or 13 or 14 page turns in a picture book where you have like a couple of acts in a theater where the backdrop doesn't get changed too much.
Right. Oh, that's right. But just like an illustrator has to vary things up to keep you interested, and they really do. If you look at a picture book, the perspective is varied, that you'll see spreads, you'll see spot art.
But that's more like a movie, where you have like
I don't think
15 or
so.
20 beats.
But at the same time, a director and the lighting designer use visual tricks to move your eye around, to compose the set. If they don't, you're bored out of your mind. What did I see where they just talk the entire time? And I just saw a play recently where they're sitting around a table talking the whole time, but there's a new play about Roald Dahl, actually. And it all takes place around a dining room table, but bringing food in and out. They're opening the door to the backyard. They're sitting on the side couch, and an illustrator's
So,
using the same tricks.
so even if you don't, in both theater and in the picture book, you don't have that many characters, and you have to move things around so you don't get bored.
Right. And you have to be very conscious, I believe, of where the audience is or where the reader or listener is. You have to, I feel like that's what I do as an editor, is I put myself in the role of a child and I think, ooh, this is where I'm getting antsy. Will I wade through the next page or not? And it's not hard to do, because I notice that if my mind has left the page and I go back and reread and my mind leaves again, I think, yeah, something's not working.
Mhm. Incredible. You wanted to say something else, but I also have a question. So do you want to say the other thing? Do you remember what
I
it
have
was?
no idea at this point, I have no idea what the other thing was.
Okay, so here's the other thing that's
Okay.
similar and dissimilar. Um, First of all, it's very interesting that most children's book authors whom I know do not write plays.
Right.
It's a separate craft. Would you suggest? I've tried to write plays and I'm terrible. But is this something that we should pursue, like to learn the craft of writing?
Oh
I
gosh, no. I'm
I, I,
interrupting.
I I'm just going to shout out to Michelle Lutzen, who's famous at
Yay.
Picture Book Library Line has become a musical. I don't know who wrote the book for that, but certainly the picture book authors I know do not write plays. But
I believe the YA author Emily Lockhart, who wrote We Were Liars, I think under another name she writes plays.
wonderful. We have to find her.
Yeah.
And here's the
Oh,
thing.
and also one other person, Madeline George. She's a wonderful writer, and she's both a playwright who has, I believe she was a Pulitzer finalist, and a great YA novelist.
So
But those are
so
my picture book writers.
so maybe yeah, okay, but maybe we should learn a little bit more how to write
And
plays.
I forgot, I'm keep interrupting myself, and I have to shout out Adam Rapp. So Adam Rapp has been a YA writer since, because I edited his first novel, and that was right around 1992, maybe. He's now a Pulitzer finalist and a twice Tony nominated playwright. His first adult novel is out and he's still writing YA. So there are a few people, but these people are ridiculously talented, and both genres are so hard. I don't know how you can do one, let alone two.
Okay, but at least we're like opening it up to discussion.
We
So
are. And sorry
my
that I didn't picture book writers, but I'll think about that.
okay, so
Oh,
my
wait, I
yeah.
do wait, I'm gonna Don Freeman, who wrote Corduroy, which listeners will know. Don Freeman also, he used to draw one of the New York papers had the top of the Sunday arts section had a long always had a drawing across the top, and he and Al Hirschfeld alternated drawing that every week. And he was enormously involved in the arts. He was a trumpeter himself. He loved the Met. He wrote a book, Pet of the Met. So, and he really understood picture book construction. And I don't think it's a bad idea to be involved in the arts and write picture books. Let me put it that way.
Okay, and of course we just mentioned briefly Maurice Sendak,
Oh, right.
Uh, author, illustrator supreme, who was also very heavily involved in theater.
Opera, I
So
think. I think he loved opera, and he was a scenic designer.
nobody he did a lot of scenic designer for Mozart and other things. So here's the question. I'm a picture book author and I've written a manuscript and it goes to you. I've submitted it to you as an agent, which you never were, or an editor, which you were, and you're going to pick this out of 3,000 books that Holiday House may publish someday. Grab it from the slush pile. Okay. But Elizabeth, to get it right, you have to imagine so many things here. You have to imagine the editing process. Then you have to imagine finding the right illustrator and getting illustrations that match the text, and then the magic of them coming together to create with the art director a picture book that people will love. And that's, you have to have vision for that. Is this similar to the vision that an editor receives when they get a manuscript for a script or a book for a musical?
I think so. I think very much so. And you said something very interesting. You said the editor and art director have to think of an illustrator who matches the text. And I would say who enhances the text, who is a fit for the text, because it's, obviously it's not a mathematical formula. To me, that's one of the great joys and interesting things. It's the exact same thing, of course, on Broadway. Who are we going to get to design the show? Who are we going to get to star in it? But there's this amazing poem by D.H. Lawrence about water is, I hope I can quote this correctly, but it's like water is 2 parts hydrogen and 1 part oxygen, but what puts them together, that's the third thing. And picture books are a third thing. They're like inscrutable, they're magic because these elements have come together. And James Kirkwood, who wrote the book, he co-wrote the book for a chorus line. He said that when a musical works, it's amazing because so many people are putting ingredients in. And I want to pause and say, I know a lot of people aren't familiar with what book for a musical actually means. So the book of a musical does not mean a published book with pages. It means the spoken words and the story. So there's lyrics for a musical, and then the book of a musical is the story and spoken words, essentially.
But the book also contains the songs.
But the lyricist writes the lyrics.
Sometimes the person who writes the book is also the lyricist, and very often
sometimes.
not.
And often
Elizabeth,
Stephen Sondheim takes lyrics, gets ideas for songs from the book, and so often he'll take a great line and make it into a song.
Yeah. And it's still called the book.
Right. What? It's called the book of a musical. That's right.
Here's the other thing. As a lover of musicals, okay, a musical has to have really good songs. Picture books don't have songs, or do they?
I actually believe that if a musical has a good story and the songs are just okay, it can work for a long time. That that it's harder. An example of this is the Spider-Man musical. The songs were pretty, they were by U2. I like them fine. They were by Bono, I guess. But the story was all over the place. So the audience didn't know what to do or what to like. And whereas there's a lot of musicals from the early 60s, I would put How to Succeed in Business in this category, that, they're fun. And of course, I love Brotherhood of Man, but it's really the fact that the story works and the story is fun that makes that musical work. And then, of course, when you get everything working, it's a masterpiece. Yeah.
Yes, the word I was looking for was confluence.
Confluence?
Is that a word?
Yeah. Okay. Like confluence of events?
Confluence of things happening together to make.
Yeah, exactly. It's amazing.
But still, so I would argue for music in picture books, because the reading of the book has to have a cadence in it, and if it's written in rhyme and meter, I tell my students that if you're not a musician, you'll have a lot of trouble writing a rhyming picture book, because you should be able to sing it.
That is a really, really interesting idea. I love that idea. I wonder if I should work with people that way. Try it. It's interesting. I was working with a private client who's a musician, and she was used to fudging things the way you can fudge them when you sing them. But I said, it's not going to work for the parent who's at home. You don't have as much license as you do in a song.
Okay, why is that? I have a theory why that is. You have a theory?
Well, my theory is that with a picture book, you have to think a parent is at home with no background. They haven't heard the song. They haven't gone to the show and bought the song for $1.99 iTunes. So they can't hear the way it's read in your head. The great Viking editor, May Massey, who's the one who published Corduroy and Madeline and a million other great books like Ferdinand, she read the texts out loud in front of the authors and had them listen to where it got slow or where it was a problem. Because when the author reads it, it always sounds great because they know what's in their head. And when I work with groups, I ask people to pass their manuscript to the right and have the other person read it so that you can hear it.
So I talked about this, I think, with Renee Latulippe. I don't remember, but like about
Can we just pause on Renee Latulippe? If anybody's listening to this and doesn't know Renee Latulippe, and you're working on a rhymed text, she is the ne plus ultra, the best. Go to her website. I bow to her.
She's the queen. And we were talking about this, and we had this notion, and we're not the first to have this notion, that our job in writing the text of picture books is to turn the amateur daddy or mummy who aren't real thespians, they aren't actors, and to help them become funny and endearing. And I think that you're right. I mean, I always ask, I've been working with Harold Underdown for years, and whenever we're working on a story, and he says, Mel, do you want to read it? I say, no, Harold, read it to me, please.
Good for you.
And then I got my pencil and I'm scribbling. So there is some music in picture books.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. That's a great point.
What else connects picture books with the theater?
Okay. The visual impact of moments, which are so crucial in picture book. And my belief, previously expressed 10 minutes ago, that the story ends up being what makes a success. A working book makes it work. And oh, sorry, hold on a second. Adobe just flashed big out on my screen, excuse me. So we've got a working book, the visual impact. I think a lot of things live or die on how satisfying the ending is. And I have a whole theory about Les Miserables, and this is not going to be popular, and everyone's going to turn off this podcast because for some reason, it's not my favorite musical, and we all know how popular it is. It has lots of recitatives, which is my favorite thing. But it has hugely rousing numbers before the intermission and at the end. So you end up feeling great, right? And you want that with a book, a picture book. You want to feel excited and have a kid say, I want to hear it again. I want to hear it again.
Indeed. The theater experience, okay, is the same or different? Because when you're in the theater with 500 other strangers and you're laughing together and you're crying together and you're stomping together, and you don't have that in a picture book. It's just, you and your mommy or daddy or someone who's reading it to you.
Well, and also the actors are communing with the audience. So the performance on stage should be, unless it's like a phoned in, heavily mic'd thing that feels kind of deadened from having been performed 3,000 times or something, it should be like a connection with the audience. So they're responding and you can see them waiting for laughs. I have a wonderful memory of having a good seat for Rent and watching Anthony Rapp stand up and to start La Vie Boheme. And I remember him singing Dearly Beloved, and the crowd cheered because they recognized the song. And I could see him holding and listening. And then I saw across the stage the conductor waiting for Anthony to start so he could hit the downbeat for that. It was so fun because I knew it was sort of in our hands when the audience calmed down enough to let them go on with the song. So that in a picture book, I think it's kind of the opposite. The familiarity is so comforting and fun. You know that your dad or mom is going to say, but afraid of a disaster, she ran fast and even faster every single time.
And said, children, do tell me what is troubling you.
Children do. Tell me what is troubling you. Hey, did we talk about the famous mistake in Madeline? We did.
Yes, we did. We
On
did
a previous one.
the extra girl at the table,
Right.
and that was very surprising for me.
Right. That books have mistakes, that we're human.
No. That it took me it took me 70 years to see it, and I wouldn't have seen it without you. So what? So let's go back to the last thing. Is there anything that we can do writing children's books that will give this more of this auditorium-like feeling? Is there something in that we could somehow borrow?
Like
we say,
explain to an audience, but are all books supposed to play to the audience like that? Because some should be like a mother and child on the lap, the child getting sleepy and ready. It should just be very intimate, shouldn't it?
I don't
A
know.
bedtime book? I'm not
I
sure
don't
Good
know.
Night Moon shouldn't be one child, watching each thing in the room getting darker.
Okay, so there's another lesson here that I wanted to stress with you, that picture books, like I got this idea from a talk that Alan Johnson gave a few years ago about a picture book as theater. And of course, she's not the first one to propose this, but it is so important. But it's not overwhelmingly important. In other words, we don't necessarily have to learn from the theater or try and imitate or simulate the theater when we're writing.
No, especially if it's not your thing. I heard Peter Martins speak last night, and Peter Martins was a great protege of Balanchine's, who ended up running the New York City Ballet for, I believe, 34 years. So he was the heir to Balanchine and kept it going for 34 years. And somebody in the audience asked a question about their 5-year-old son, who was very, very gifted at dancing, but hated it. And Peter Martins was like, don't push it, let him go. Maybe he'll find a teacher who turns him on later. Do not force it. And not everybody likes theater. When I was in college playing my show tune, my cast albums, I remember my friend's boyfriend would always walk into my dorm room and go, show tunes, and grab his head. Doesn't work for everybody.
Here's my next question. A famous agent once eschewed, is that a good word?
Eschewed, yeah.
Writing a lot of dialogue in a picture book.
Right.
Theater is all dialogue. Movies are all dialogue. What is your take on this, Elizabeth?
I think there is too much. Well, I have two things to say, and I'm going to remember both of them this time. Don't freak yourself out about these pieces of advice that you hear in speeches, because I get so many questions from clients about, like, I heard it can't be over 500 words. I heard they don't like reindeer in Christmas books anymore. I heard, so, I hear, I had the grandmother in there, but then I heard that we were tired of intergenerational stories. So first of all, write the book that you need to write, and don't worry too much. But yeah, too much dialogue is probably a problem that some people have, because in a picture book, you're trying to tell a story and not a lot of words. I'm curious, how much dialogue is in your book, Mel? The one that's been published?
The one that's been published. Oh my goodness. Well, it hasn't been published in the States yet.
Okay.
Maybe when it comes out in the States, you'll interview me, Elizabeth.
I'd love to. I'd be honored.
But it'll take a year and a half. Oh my goodness, how much? You see, here, that's the thing, you see. You're the first person to ask me that question. Well,
that's because nobody pays attention to how much dialogue is in a picture book.
Nor I. And when people say that to me, you shouldn't have too much dialogue, I think automatically of Elephant and Piggy are in a book.
Oh.
Which is theater, which is pure theater.
Absolutely.
So what you're saying is really, really important. And we're going to start to close up because this is really interesting. In other words, there's a lot of similarities between theater and picture book writing. Both it depend a lot on visuals. Both depend on pacing. Both depend on having visual changes so that you don't get bored.
And both need a story that works.
A story that works and cadence
And
and coming
cadence.
and coming around in the end to a spiffy ending that is somehow closure from the beginning, with a twist or two at the end. So these are
I'm not sure there has to be a twist at the end.
really.
I see too many manuscripts that try for a twist.
Okay, so here you
I
go
think that
again.
might be one of those weird pieces of advice that people pick up. They don't all have to have twists.
So Elizabeth, this is really great. So what you're I'm gonna try and sum this up. So if you are a musician, use your musical talents. If you like the theater, infuse it somehow in your writing. If you like,
Or go to the theater, enjoy, including watching all the things that are available on streaming now and this National Theater Live stuff and think about it and think about, be inspired by it. And
yeah, but don't push it too much. Listen to music, but don't push it too much. It's okay to learn, but okay. So what you're saying is learn the craft, learn other crafts, but be you.
Yeah, I'm saying, let's see. I'm definitely saying be you. I'm definitely saying learn picture book craft, keep working on it. Try not to say, while you're learning craft and understanding how to tell a story in a short amount of space and how to keep interest, don't freak out too much about rules because that will get in your head and you won't be you. Those are the things I think I'm saying. And yes, and any other craft or any other art form will probably inspire you.
Yes, but if it doesn't work for you,
yeah,
then don't dwell on it.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, God, absolutely.
That's a great place to. That's a great place to. I think to finish up here, because you always want to be like this and be like this. And you see a book and you hear a talk and you speak to an agent or an editor and you should do this and you should do that. But and maybe you should. And maybe you should.
Also, I mean, go back to that D.H. Lawrence poem. It's the third thing that nobody can say what that is. It's a magical element. Why is dinosaurs love tacos? I mean, it's such a fun book. Everybody likes it, but I'm friends with the agents. They had no idea this book was going to go and go and go and go and go, and you can't really copy it. Just do your own thing.
Yeah. And yeah, I was because I like to write a lot of humor, but humor is also something that you can't force. You can.
Oh God, no.
No. So don't force. So learn craft, learn techniques, learn outside the comfort zone of the picture book, and then be you. That's great advice.
And if Fiddler on the Roof comes to your town, go see it because it's a great show.
And Guys and Dolls.
Oh God, yes. There's that great production still running in London. In case you
well, I saw it. I think because of you, and I was standing there crying like a baby.
Amazing, yeah.
Yeah. Elizabeth Law, this has been spectacular.
Mel, thank you for inviting me back. I could talk to you for hours. We could talk about children's books for hours and hours.
And we shall.
And we will. Okay.
So I've been with Elizabeth Law, editor supreme, and my name is Mel Rosenberg, and I'm the host of the Children's Literature Channel of the New Books Network. And we have been talking about the similarities and dissimilarities between theater and picture books. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Go out and come back and we'll have our little tete-a-tete.
Okay, bye, Mel.
Bye.